Do I have
This
a motion?
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you.
Nice job. Do I have a motion to call our meeting to order?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay. Our meeting officially has begun. Do I have an approval of our agenda? Sent by Angie. It's on your screen.
So moved.
Second. Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. You'll also see in your packet your minutes from February 16th. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about those meeting minutes, excuse me? I'm not hearing any discussion. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes as written?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Moving on to number 4, do we have any visitors there?
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. Number 5, unfinished.
I don't see any on the screen either, Laura, so.
Sounds good. Moving on. We'll go with unfinished business, our parks master plan, continuing that discussion.
Sure. Just to update you a little bit, Scott has prepared a couple of draft master plan items for us: Jefferson Park, Riverside Park, and Warren Park. Our goal tonight is just Scott wants to walk through some of the areas that we want to have improvements. We're going to be in the process of sitting down with Joey and Sally Vogel from financing, looking at some methods that we can use to implement more of our master planning tools. Setting aside money, as you guys know, we have $100,000 for capital improvements. For a 5-year window, we're in year 3, I believe, of that process right now. And so at the end of that 5 years, we want to have that be a regular maintenance item. So I want you to start thinking about how we transition from what we are showing you over the period of the next few months to how we get things funded and what we do with those. And so this is really not intended for you guys to approve master plan tonight, but more or less talk about theory and concept. And then I think we've got some newer members that probably have a little more expertise than what we've had in the past. And we'd love to hear some feedback. I'll turn it over to Scott.
So with that, looking at Jefferson, we I just pulled some of the things that were from the old master plan and then just going out there, looking at just basic needs or wants. Probably the biggest thing out there is the parking lot. It's just weathered, it needs some help. It's probably the most costly of all the things that we could come with out there as well. Looking at the steel dugouts, we're hoping to work with the softball association to see if they would want to contribute some funding for it, or maybe the girls fast pitch, see if they would contribute something for it. Again, just things that are outdated. The bleachers, they're outdated, and the city is trying to, or we're moving from P-rock in the playgrounds. We're gonna start putting in the ADA wood chip fiber, it's more durable, lasts longer, it's better, it's not messy. I don't have kids, but I'd imagine they would have shoes full of rocks if they were in there. So no one wants that. Outside of that, I figured it'd probably be easiest just to get everyone's feedback on each park as I go through them. If there is any, if there isn't any. I do know that lighting isn't on here, and that's not saying that it can't be on there. It's just, it's rather expensive to put lighting at these ballparks.
So we really don't have a funding mechanism, Scott, is what you're talking about for something that size.
Right. I mean, if to be honest, and going through all the parks since I've been here, that is probably the biggest Achilles heel is the funding process. It's just lacking. Not that we can't come up with something. I guess going off of what Pete was talking about, is that's what we're trying to figure out, is how to create that funding process.
Right. Yeah, and there hasn't been any funding. That's the issue. And now we're trying to work our way back into more of the capital planning. One of the things that we've talked about internally is it would be possible to look at putting this on the equipment certificate. Now, as many of you may or may not know, equipment certificate money is funded and authorized by the city council. It is basically it's paid back by taxes that are done through a special assessment. So everybody throughout the city pays for those improvements. Now, we haven't got to the point with our city council yet that they have accepted that we can be bringing these type of purchases in for equipment certificate thought process. So it would be something that we'd have to go to the council and ask for that. Usually that's about a 1 to 2 year process. By the time you set the idea of what you want to do to try to implement some of these things, and then to have that in the budget cycle or a budget capital improvement plan, usually takes between 1 and 2 years. And then what we're really looking for is if the council would say, okay, we're going to afford you $75,000 each year in the equipment certificate to improve parks. And then we'd probably create a plan like we did the 5-year window where we can go in and make certain improvements on different parks based on funding and that availability. That would be in lieu of the 100,000 that we're already getting. So it's really a capital improvement. How about questions or concerns, or is there any thought process on how we're spending that 100,000? You want to stay the course on what we've been doing there. That was really an attempt to just identify for our council members where we were taking our money to that was allocated back into parks.
So I don't want to derail anything because I know I have a big learning curve with knowing what's been going on and all of that. But one of the things that as I'm looking at the documentation and the plans is that I'm struggling is kind of understanding like what is driving the overall vision of where we want our parks to be going. And I don't know if I just haven't found where I need to be reading about that, or because to me, that's what I need to know in order to say, okay, then I think this is where we should be spending the limited resources that we have.
Right.
And just to jump in a little bit, I think what is kind of driving that right now is not having a funding mechanism for some of those bigger ticket items. So we'd love to have right now have field lighting, competitive field lighting list on all 4 of those fields right now. But to put that on a master plan at this point without identifying a way to get there, is just kind of, it's just putting it on a piece of paper. So we'd love to do that stuff, but before we do that, we need to find a funding mechanism. So maybe Rochelle, to a little bit answer your question, is right now we're, Scott listed 4 items here, and there are more than that, but 4 kind of attainable items to get to that we know need some attention. But yeah, identifying a funding mechanism maybe should be identified in our overall park master planning, and then coming up with some options and start talking with our counselors and our all of you guys on how we can get there. But that's a great observation and something we've discussed internally as well.
In the older plan, Rochelle, we did have a little more narrative as far as where each park was going to go or what the overall thought process was. But what we found out was without the funding mechanism, all we did was kept saying the same thing year after year and nothing changed. And so as dollars became available, we were instructed that it really was important that we kept the council abreast on where that money was going. And that is why you saw that 5-year plan with the $100,000 in capital funding there. I anticipate that going away, and then we're going to prioritize the issues that we've already approved into a different plan.
Okay, so the 100,000 is not in perpetuity. I mean, that's just,
We anticipate it would be,
okay,
but we want to blend it back into the overall capital plan, and then not specifically work on the 5 areas that we talked about. And then what would happen is the Parks Board would prioritize the projects wherever they may be, whatever they may get funded, and say, okay, we've got $140,000 to work with, and you're going to give me your top 10 list of items. That may be $170,000, and we may work with associations to raise a few dollars here and there. But eventually what we're going to do is get more towards a true master plan instead of having all of these areas identified with kind of a wish list. How about additional questions possibly on Jefferson as far as structure of what you're seeing there and or ties to a common vision?
I'm sorry, I have one more question just for my own clarity. So when you say, because I heard 2 different things, the wood chip product, I mean, is that a solid surface, or is that kind of the traditional fill wood chips?
It's just like mulch, except for it's
Okay.
ADA compliant, where it kind of firms up, and it's down in Tremendous right now. Actually, if you go down there in like 3 weeks, there'll be new stuff down there, so you can see what it looks like, all like
Okay.
brand new.
A lot of our improvements are meant to be either an ADA compliant or a true deficiency that we've identified, like bleachers here and roofing for the dugouts. The roofing for the dugouts, of course, is something that really benefits the players. The bleachers benefit the fans. The wood chips would benefit the little brothers and sisters that are probably going along to watch either their sister play or dad play or mom play or whatever along there. So trying to be a little more of a balance, I guess, in how we look at those improvements.
You know, with that what Pete was saying, if you go, we look at Riverside, Mill Pond, that vision for that park, you know, is probably ADA and just the way the functionality of how to get around in that park. It's just kind of outdated in that sense of just the flow of it. And that is something that I focused on when we put this together, was just the flow of that park. It gets visited, it's in a great location, so it gets plenty of visitors from downtown during lunch break going down there. It's just, right now it doesn't have, just needs a couple fixer-uppers, like with that structure improvements. We talked about getting a grant applying for the grant for the fishing pier. The campground would be outstanding if that was paved in there for the vehicles to drive around on, so it's not dusty, it isn't muddy. And then to have a sidewalk from the campground up to the restrooms and to the playground there for someone who is handicapped, that would really make that park just that much more functional. So I totally understand where Rochelle's coming from with that. That makes a lot of sense. But we have a small piggy bank.
Then when you look at something like the Mill Pond, again, it's quite different than Jefferson Park. Jefferson Park, you have Softball Association, the Adult League. You have the girls fast pitch, who's been really the mainstay on how that park is developed. At the Mill Pond, you have no associations. There's no camping association that can come in and pay for that. It's kind of a poor man's house because a lot of the equipment down there is in tough shape or just plain old. So there's a lot of love that's needed down there.
They're not coming in, I can use the office, that's on those buses.
I don't think so. Joey, is there enough coming in on camping fees to offset any of those costs?
No, well, no, our camping fees are very affordable and, you know, they're meant to supplement some of what we're doing, but really they're, you know, they're not covering even close to anywhere maintenance costs or anything like that. And which is not untraditional of a municipal campground. You know, the goal of that is to create an amenity for the community and for visitors to come in and visit St. Peter and spend some money in the community. And I think it accomplishes that. And we're not trying to price people out of, you know, that amenity that way.
This would be more of your community support. So maintenance dollars would do a lot of work here within Scott's budget, and the capital improvements would be something that we could either do in-house cheaply, such as lay the asphalt or provide sidewalks. We really wouldn't have a capital improvement program for something of this nature.
How do you go about getting feedback on the parks? So I see in here the idea of like it's a common request to have more shade structures. So just generally, like, what mechanisms have been used? Has it been primarily people reaching out to you, or surveys, or what sort of methods, I guess, have been used to elicit feedback?
We really haven't on community structures like this. We really haven't had a lot of feedback, except for probably direct feedback. Somebody that would walk through this area or use this park would probably stop in at City Hall and say something like, boy, it'd really be nice if you did this. Or here's what's needed down there. COVID pretty much put an end to the camping in for the last year. So they've kind of had a black hole there as far as all activities in the Mill Pond area. We'd like to rejuvenate that and get some activities going on there. But as far as feedback, we need to improve on that. That's a great question. Maybe something more that we need to have as far as how we approach master planning. Do we have a public meeting? Do we talk about community parks in one aspect and athletic complexes in another? I mean, you could have several public meetings that focus on the individual type of park and try to get feedback from that.
And Haley, I think your question also kind of ties into, you know, a greater funding mechanism for our park system. You know, if that's something that comes to fruition in St. Peter, then I think it's a great time to solicit feedback from the community and say, hey, here's what do you like about our park system? Where are we lacking? And then run through that set of questions and do that in a variety of ways. You know, do that through, you know, social media. We do that through community feedback in person, and then also do that with electronic surveys, you know, that go out directly or direct mailings too. And you know, not on one way. And then also our user groups would be very important to get, you know, the bike community, the walking community, and our associations that use our areas. So, you know, what we hate to keep going back to these funding mechanisms, but it's something we really have to seriously look at as a city on if we really want to continue to improve our parks and then speed that up a little bit. You know, we need the sources of dollars.
What would it take to put something on the city website that you could use to solicit information? It would just a form of some kind that would have all the parts on there and somebody could. Right
now we have a software that will do that, so we can certainly do that. Yep. And you know, there's a couple ways to look at it. Maybe we start surveying before we have a funding source, and then that's extra ammunition to say, hey, you know, our community wants this. How can we get this for them? You know, and so yeah, that's something we can certainly look at.
And we'd have to have a little more information, Joey, I think, that we can pull from the budget and have Sally talk about what we spend in dollars per person, maybe within the community. And part of the survey questions would be, are you willing to pay a little more to have some additional features? If so, what would they be? You know, it could be, no, I don't want to, and then yes, I do, and here's what some of those features could be.
Yep.
A lot of this stuff that you're seeing that we're calling capital improvements is really maintenance.
Mhm.
And just at a point where you're run down and you're trying to call it a capital improvement because it's got to change.
It'd be interesting to ask a question about if they've gone to a park or which park do they frequent. You know, we've talked before about wanting to know the numbers or kind of the usage per park and how to gather that data.
Right.
Yep.
We can put that on our deliverables for next meeting's discussion, is pull together some survey information related to the parks. And if you guys have any suggestions about questions or how we structure that, we'd love to hear that, so that we can, whatever we put out there has some value.
Mhm.
So what I'm hearing from you is that in order to secure this funding source that you're talking about, is going to take 3 to 4 years. Is that correct?
I'd say at least 2, from how our budget process works and trying to set things up so that we know we're moving in the right direction. We can always ask for money. I know how that usually goes, and we know that answer before we ask. Yeah. So it's really about taxes and what can be afforded, and we just need some really good data is what we need.
Mhm.
Well, it occurs to me that what you're saying is we can't really talk about improvements on the capital side for another couple of years.
Well, I think we talk about improvements because we've got to have an idea of what that scope is. So if we've got a $1 million problem, we've got to figure out how to make that happen. If we've got a $500,000 problem, that's a separate issue. Maybe that's solved in a variety of different ways. So don't really have a grasp on the total value of really our park system. As you know, there's higher and higher demand all the time for, we want to do more, we want this in there. And coming out of COVID, we don't really know what to expect right now. You know, if we do have things solved by, let's say, the 4th of July, are people going to come to the parks and saying, where you guys been for the last year? So what we're trying to do is get a jump on it and have a solid plan based on some good data, and then where the community wants to take it to.
What if we focused on prioritizing which parks we would focus on first, second, third, and so on?
Sure.
As part of this grand plan. Because what we've been doing so far is, like you said, instead of improvements, just repairing what we have, mainly. And then we do it with all of the parks. So shade structures in all of the parks. And
right.
I don't know that that's getting us anywhere.
Right. I think we were trying, Mike, to meet the needs of the council. The council allocated that money back to the parks, but they weren't much where it was going.
Right,
So
exactly. I understand that. So let me just ask a hypothetical question. if we were going to say prioritize parks, which park would we focus on first? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, just ask Scott. That's a tough one because we have so many needs. And different parks mean something different to everyone. So just internally, we don't want to. We probably have our projects that we want to hit, but we're trying to make all of our areas better. So that's tough to do, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what I'm saying.
would that be something then that we survey the community for and say, here you go, Facebook page or chamber or whatever, hit all those areas and say, if you could, redo a park, which one in the community would you do? Maybe only give them a selection because sometimes it's too broad. People don't, it gets too far out there. But if we had the ones that we were certain that we would like to focus on first and then reaching out to the community in that way.
Right, and so that's a great point, Sarah, because what I would say is focus on the community parks. There's 5 or 6 that are community parks that serve everyone. And then you have your neighborhood parks that serve standard subdivision or Lampert subdivision or whatever that case would be. Those can include that neighborhood, and we can mail those guys information and say, what would you like to improve about this? Or, get some of that feedback. But really it's community parks, and then Minnesota Square is pretty much your top vote getter for about everything that everybody wants to have improvement into.
Yeah. Well, even to just get people thinking, even like about the little parks and their subdivisions. I don't know if it's Lampert Edition with the little park. If somebody even got thinking about, well, let's go around the neighborhood and, maybe create a fund that way. And, like they did with the dog parks and, just fuel some thinking.
Right.
But I think going back to what Pete said about classifying parks as community parks versus neighborhood parks, or those parks that serve people outside of the community and provide, let us say, like an ambassador type of function. I really don't know how to go about classifying these and prioritizing that.
We have them on the sheet here. If you guys look at like the park, just take Jefferson, the classification is outdoor sports complex. We did have that breakdown a few years back related to how we did things there, but we're expecting associations really to step up. Joey and I have met with associations, and I know Scott's had conversations with associations. So we're trying to target, if they've got money to bring to the table, where is their complex that they want to see upgraded, and then we try to work independently with that. So we can take a look at classifications and then maybe put some of the parks in an order of needs and different things out there for discussion, if that's what we prefer to do.
Excuse me, as I look at the information about these 2 parks, for example, I mean, it seems pretty clear that Scott has done a good job of identifying some of the things that are in need right now. But as you said, I do see a lot of them as maintenance and trying to figure out how do we bring those back into the kind of standard that we want with the limited funds. And I think that it is going to require some, as you all have been doing for quite a while, trying to make those hard decisions about where to spend that money. And my inclination would be to say, maybe finding out some more community input about usage of the parks and perception of the parks, because I know I have my opinions about like, oh, I go to this park frequently, and so I see these things, but I don't go to every, I don't use every park in St. Peter. So
Sure. Okay. Well, why don't Scott and I look at a couple of the capital versus maintenance issues. We'll talk to Joe about how we can possibly assemble that a little better, and then we'll keep working to bring you guys back maybe a more of a division of the role that that park plays, and maybe divide that way a little bit.
Pete, is there a way that you could come up with some kind of a grading system on the parks that would just look at maintenance issues? Just look at like how much, like what's currently the state of the resources that we have in each one? You know, I mean, to what degree does it need to be fixed? So you could have a system that would just allow us to more easily compare them one another.
So what we currently do is just playground inspections and park inspections, and that's where a lot of this list gets created from. Well, not a lot of it, but most of it. A lot of the playground equipment, if there's a park that is in here that says needs a playground, it's probably because the one that's in there is dated. And with the playground inspections, along comes ADA. So if the park's out of ADA compliancy, there's no sense in stuffing a $150,000 playground in there if they can't get to it. So it all kind of all ties together.
But I think we can, Eli, as far as the recommendation that you had was rate some of the equipment and rate some of the structures that are there, and kind of give you an idea on how poor some of it is or how good some of it is.
Right. Yeah. It seems like it would be helpful for me at any rate to be able to look at all these parks and just be able to see what the current state of the amenities that are in there. You know, the benches and, you know, children's equipment and swings and all that kind of stuff, you know. I just don't go to all the parks myself either, so.
I would love to see at our next meeting kind of continuing that survey idea of some way to gather some of that data of where our community wants to see the parks going and where they want, if we have more dollars someday, where they would like to see them spent.
Okay. I don't know if we'll have the data by then, Laura, but we can certainly put together some survey questions and work that out and see if that meets your guys' needs.
Sounds good.
How about any other questions on just the information we've got out there? Anything that rings a bell?
I guess I can just quickly scoot through Warren Park, granted, considering we kind of come to the conclusion that we just need money. But with that, the thing that when I looked at this park and you look at it like on Google Maps, it looks like with all the development that's going to come around it, to me, it just looks like a just essential park. So the idea of it was just to kind of put in structures and amenities where it can fit all ages of people, you know, older, younger kids, children, you know. So it was kind of why we thought about the basketball court and these concrete beanbag toss boards I've seen in a park in Scott County. They were pretty cool. So just thought it'd be something kind of neat for adults out there. And again, with the wood chip fiber for ADA, we'd love to clean up the tree line to the west. You guys know, well, the tree line next to the swing set there. We'd like to turn that into a natural like park area with like outdoor exercise equipment and maybe a future trail in there. That was just kind of brought to us here not too long ago. So that's kind of a new thinking, but we've seen them. We've seen them in different cities. They're pretty neat. They're inexpensive. You just use what's out there. So just a couple things we were thinking about.
This again would be one of the parks where you'd want to engage the neighborhood. They've kind of bought into that area and are very proud of what goes on out there and would like to see the improvement before anything would happen out there. But like Scott had mentioned, the shelter belt has beautiful potential out there, and it's natural with what they had existing. And we'd have to do quite a bit of work inside there in order to make that happen, but a lot of options. This could be one of the areas too that we do a survey just for that neighborhood and say, what would you like to see for improvements here? Here's some of the thought processes from the park board. Would you like to see a exercise area within the shelter belt?
Any other discussion on the 3 parks highlighted here? Okay, moving on to new business, the Levee Park Trail.
Sure. Let me fill you in a little bit just on Levee Park altogether. As you guys know, we were working with the Arts Council to do some work with the Granlund family to look at some art in that park and laying out quite an improvement that would be funded through the Granlund family and other artists that are known to the Granlund family. And that has kind of hit a roadblock to the degree that the family is discussing different options related to what they want to do. So what we're trying to do is we still want to capitalize on the trail needs down there as a first step for improvement. And what you see outlined here is the red line that goes from the Mill Pond Park all the way over to the sidewalk off of Broadway Avenue, which would go right behind the pearly gates. And so if you get a chance to walk down there, you can kind of see what's going on. A lot of this work here would be done in a couple different steps. Scott's crew would do some tree trimming through here. We'd be working with the DNR so that they would know what our plans are down there. We've got some water level issues and some protected areas that we have to stay away from, but I think we've done that pretty well. Our first step would be to level that off, get our equipment in there, put down a base material, probably leave it gravel for a year, and then we'd work on getting some asphalt on top of that trail so that people could walk all the way from over by Broadway to the Mill Pond. We just want to capitalize the water scenario there in the future. We could extend it off to the south. Southeast, I would call it there, along the riverbank. You know, the boat landing's down there, so it'd be more of a trail that would lead to a lookout or a water area or a turnaround, whatever would be put in on that end down there. But we really want to get some movability going through that park. Something that when we do decide to do something in that park, which we really want to do on the arts level down there, we want to make a place for people to come downtown and have a bag lunch or meet with their family for lunch and go on and do some other things and have some walkability. And we would build off of that trail in the future is what our goal would be. How about questions, comments? Does the route look okay?
Is the plan to keep the swings and the slides still there?
For now.
Okay.
I would say in the future that wouldn't be a part of where that park goes. So we're trying to work out some of those issues. Again, what is the vision for that area there? I think we've got to establish that first. And what we can do is say, okay, here's how we're going to get there. And this is the first step.
Well, I think at one of our previous discussions, we had talked about having, more space there with picnic tables and stuff for families to eat versus the hot slide that becomes in the summer.
Yeah. And that equipment's old, you know, so it's tough.
Mhm.
Now, this may be a part too that we, with the chamber being there, that we could work with the chamber on, you know, what they need to see down there. What would the downtown businesses like to see out of that park? What would the Arts Council like to see out of that park? If we could phase things in, what could we get going? Just because the Granlund situation isn't working out right now, does it mean we can't earmark that and say, here's where we want to be in the future, and we put the trails in anyway, and then they can adapt the art to the trails? You know, that might be one method to get there. Sometimes people can't see what that park can be until they see part of what it can be. So if we get a trail in there, we hope to encourage more people to, you know, use that as a walkway and visit that park.
Bruce.
Do we have an estimate on what a trail would cost through there?
We haven't yet. We wanted to make sure that this route would be okay for any of the future visioning. And once you guys kind of say, I don't see any problems, or yes, it looks good, or no, I wouldn't do that, then we'll start putting numbers to it and start talking about getting a solid route and talking about it.
It would be rather inexpensive. I mean, because a lot of it's going to be done in-house. We just got to trim some trees, put some dirt in there that we already have. I mean, it wouldn't be all that expensive. The most expensive part would be the asphalt. That's just my 2 cents.
Are the Granlunds familiar with what you're planning on doing with?
They are not right now. We will meet with the Arts Council, the group on Main Street there. They were the ones that had initiated some of the conversation, and they had an architect lay out some of that. Our goal would be to send this to them and say, can you build off of what we have here? And get their input and feedback, and kind of a first step to get the ball moving.
So will you be bringing up the trail with that meeting, at that meeting?
Yes.
All right. So if they say, looks like a good idea, could we get could you give us an estimate on what it would cost?
You bet.
Okay.
Pete, have you looked at looking at grants from the Minnesota Arts Council or whatever? There's a lot of grants available for doing art-related projects, and I don't know if it qualifies, but it certainly could, or you could make it so that it did.
Right. We would probably work with Ann down at the Arts Council there to start that process.
Hey, Pete.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Al. Yeah, this is a side question. I'm just curious, is there any city staff time dedicated to chasing grants here, there, opportunities all over the place within their job description at all that chases after grants quite a bit, or no?
Not really per se. We do at Public Works here. Angie spends quite a bit of her time coordinating and organizing a lot of different activities that we do out here, keeping an eye on those things. Scott and her have been working, as you guys know, at Minnesota Square to work with the DNR on some of those grants. We've gotten SHIP grants because these guys have been active. I know Joey's made some applications up there for recreation on a variety of different things. Well, we got to find the right grant and make it fit, or make our project fit to the right grant in
Sure.
order to be successful.
No, it makes sense. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep. And Al, I just think that's something we continuously look at. You know, it's just kind of when something becomes eligible that we've like Pete said, then we go for it. We have an approval process through the city too, through the city administrator's office to do that. You know, a lot of times, a lot of these grants are matching grants and things like that, so we have to get approval to do things.
Sure, sure. I know at Tri-County, they always tell me to chase after grants, and that can be a time-consuming thing. So I get that. And just one more question on the grants. Just curious with the city membership in the, what is it, membership in SIMPA, is it? Does SIMPA do any kind of grants like with lighting and such? I know they do rebates for us residents. You guys pass through, but when cities want to do big lighting projects, do they offer any grants at all, or not really, I guess?
Not really. Their only grant really is that rebate program, which they are pretty generous on. So they're trying to get you to change your behavior in something that will make a difference in how they have to spend capital funds on as well.
Yeah. Yep.
They have been very generous with butterfly habitat though, and different plantings. So they have been a big booster of that.
Sure.
As you guys know, power lines are probably one of the biggest areas for habitat that they're trying to recoup on, areas that are basically grass and hills and different areas that they can get wildlife plantings into.
Oh yeah, no, makes sense. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the detour there.
Oh, good idea though.
Any other discussion for the Levee Park Trail?
We'll work on some information for you guys again and bring some of that back. And we got a few deliverables there to work on.
Sounds good. Thank you, Pete. Moving on to reports. I do not have a chair's report, so we can go right down to letter B, Department of Recreation update.
All right. In your packet is the February activity report. Without going too in depth into things, February was again a month where we saw solid traction with both in-person and virtual offerings, wide variety of all ages incorporated in that. If you ever see anything in that activity report that you have a question on, whether it's during our meeting time or outside of meeting times, please contact me. I'd be happy to discuss some of the things in there and the findings. But one thing in February is we did see more of an uptick of facility use. You know, as people are becoming more comfortable with the restrictions in place and doing things and doing things safely, we're seeing a lot more use in our facility, and we are accommodating groups due to COVID. One of those is the school district is going to have their alternative learning center called Rock Bend housed at the community center. Today was supposed to be the first day of school, so in February we were kind of looking and getting all that set up. We also started to have vaccination sites through the county using our facility. So staff has had to be really flexible with making things work. Some of our spaces some of our groups that are used to having certain space, we'd have to shift them around because we're committed to helping the county out and helping the school district out make things work during this time. So any questions on the activity report? All right, then jumping into all association meeting. Last week we had our all association meeting. Pete, Scott, and myself, along with the school district, Jordan and a few other representatives from the school district attended. The goal of this meeting is once a year we try to get together with all of our association and user groups that we work with, and just kind of it's a communication session, kind of go over the goals and what we're trying to do internally with the city, what the school district's trying to do, and then what these associations, how we all fit together and help each other out. I think we had a real positive meeting, had a lot of good discussion. And then from there, what we do on top of that is we'll meet with these associations one-on-one before, if they have a season or if they have a project that they're working on, we'll meet with them one-on-one. So we kind of try to have constant lines of communication with them because they're important to what we're doing in our park system. And they help us make a lot of things go. And we want our parks to reflect the activities that they're offering the community. So that was a good meeting last week. Jumping into summer employment and programming. Our summer brochure is scheduled registration scheduled to start April 14th, is a Wednesday. That's about 2 weeks later than we normally do, and that was done in conjunction with community education as a plan to allow us a little more time to know what restrictions were going to still be in place as we're planning programs and things like that. So by the end of this week, we'll have the majority of our things for first review, and then that will go to print. So look for a lot of promotion on that. We're excited about job applications closing this week and then seeing what type of interest we have in a variety of positions throughout the city. So we'll be hopefully interviewing a lot of different people for our open positions. Our plan is to have a full staff for the summer, full staffing needs for the summer for the pool and for recreation programming. So we hope we have interested candidates that way. And then a COVID-19 update. So last week, the governor at the end of the week just gave an update on the biggest dial back since COVID took place. A lot of that is affecting recreation programming and then some of the things coming up for the summer, some of our parks. Just a couple things that affect us. Our pools right now are at 50 for the summer. As of right now, we're at 50% capacity. So that's up from 25%. So that will directly affect our outdoor pool. And then, so that's a definite good thing. And then with some of our outdoor activities now, they're going from 25 indoors to 50 outdoors. So that's an increase as well in the pods that they lay out. So definitely some good news coming. Still, safety is the #1 priority for us and their associations and our other groups doing things. So COVID preparedness plans are in place, and we're working with our associations and internally for the programs that we run to make sure we have a solid plan in place for making these activities work throughout the spring and summer here. Any questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Moving on to Public Works.
Sure. Community Spirit Park restrooms. I believe the school is discussing the process for approval tonight. If we get the green light from the school board to go ahead with construction, we will bring that to the city council next week on March 22nd for approval. Salonic Incorporated out of Springfield was the bidder of that project. And so we'd anticipate work starting after school gets out in June and being completed by about August 10th. And we should have some activities ready to roll around those restrooms. They would be fully funded restrooms or fully filled restrooms. And Jordan just sent me a note that said the school board approved it tonight. So he is optimistic and we will get some activities worked out there. Thank you, Jordan. And then summer employment, as Joey had talked about, we are anticipating full staff in here. As you guys know, we've made some changes with our downtown beautification. We're looking at a gardener coming on staff here. Actually, we had one last year that worked for us. And we're hoping that we get some good applications to come in and really improve the flowers downtown and in a lot of our parking areas. So we've had so many positive comments just about the presence of what those parks bring. We're hoping that they bring a lot of people in there so that we can get some good feedback on what we need to do there. But we do have a park ranger planned and a specialized person in the tree area that's going to come in. So we got several areas that Scott's going to work really hard on as far as improvements within our community. COVID update, nothing new really from Public Works side of you from last time. We're 100% working here. And as Joey had mentioned, we're going to get geared up for pool activities this year, just like last year. And hopefully we can be on schedule and on time with that. We don't see COVID as an impact there. And so we hope to really get things going back to full speed here. We hope by the 4th of July, where everybody else's targets are, that we've got something happening in St. Peter. Then for Minnesota Square Park DNR grant, they'll be submitting that here in March if they haven't already. Angie and Scott have done a great job of pulling that together with a plan and working out the details. That is a matching grant, so we'll have some activities going on there, plus all the other activities that are planned for the plaza down in Minnesota Square. It should be an interesting summer, to say the least, there. And then, Scott, do you want to touch on 2022 park improvements?
Well, you all have seen this sheet here for, I don't know, the past probably 2 meetings. Kind of just goes back to what Mr. Beidelman was saying in the sense of how we score or rank, I guess, the needs and the wants in each park per, what's going on, if it's a playground or a trail or structure. I guess I wasn't here at the last meeting, but last meeting y'all talked about the shade structures and how we scored them there from 1 to 5. Outside of that, I just put the cost together and what they should estimately cost. We know that there's some associations that are interested in donating funding for them, such as the soccer club is interested in donating funding for a shelter. As you notice, though, most of the other 3 parks are, neighborhood parks, which we discussed is hard to find. There's no associations in there. Ideally, as you see, that Hallett's is number 1. It's just, in order for that to happen, there needs to be some land acquisition. So that's kind of a hang up with that park right now. There's so much potential down there. Pete and I talk about it quite often. It's just that land. We need the land.
So our goal, Scott, would be to work on items 2 through 5 as our priority unless something breaks loose, but we'll still have in the back of our mind that if something happens on the Hallett's Pond area, we can flip over to hitting the 3 number 1s there.
Yep, that's the intent right now. So, I mean, we feel that goal is within reach for those other 4 parks. So that'd be a great little addition to all these other to those parks anyway. I don't know, does anyone have any questions, concerns, comments?
And that would be our reports.
Okay. Anybody got anything else to add to the agenda? Any other thing?
Shannon, sorry we did this to you again. I know you guys are pretty busy down there, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It was another long meeting, so here I am, just under the wire.
Well, welcome to about the last 2 minutes of our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.
Shannon, if you want to give me a call this week sometime.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you a call, Pete.
Okay, thank you.